welcome to episode 738 of Longbox Heroes, the Lamborghini of comic book podcasts. I'm Todd, along with Joe. How are we doing today?
Perfect enunciation on that H. That's how
H's are my thing, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't or no?
I'm sure I have a bunch of things due to where we live that I have a regional accent for.
Mm-hmm.
But there's stuff that people who live like 15 minutes away, who got 40 feet of snow this week, say things slightly different. So it's literally like crossing the street and you have different accents in the way that our section of northeastern Pennsylvania works.
Right. I've been told, because I've invited a few people to like family gatherings, friends that are mine, and they'd be like, you know what I noticed about you, Todd? When you're with your family, your like Dixon City, Jessup accent like really kicks in, and the words that you do. He's like, yeah, like you'll say "hey no more" and "you eat yet?" No, Jew kind of stuff like that. So
yeah,
but I try to stay on top of it. You know what I mean?
I know. I kind of, and again, I don't give you a hard time, but I notice, at least in my head, the way that you say Lamborghini and the way that I say Lamborghini is very different.
Lamborghini.
Right. See, that time you specifically said it weird. But the true test for people in the northeastern Pennsylvania area, and this is a worldwide podcast, but I like to give everyone a little bit of local color, you know?
Right. The culture here, if you will.
Yes. I don't want to get into which accents in all of Pennsylvania I think sound the worst, and I'm being nice. But Todd, what's that thing in your bed that you rest your head on? What's that called?
A pillow. No, it's a pillow.
All right. You say it correctly.
Yes, I do. I also do the old joke, where are the trees in Dixon City, Joe?
After the twos?
Yeah, between the twos and the fours, you're supposed to say.
Oh, okay.
Right. So
I only know that the Einen, you live much closer to it. I only know that accent from horribly offensive songs that they play on the local radio around here.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. Daniels and Webster's ruled.
To make fun of those people.
Mm-hmm. Those people, yes.
The people that live 35 minutes away.
Right, or 10 from me. 5 maybe at most.
Right. But go ahead. You were going to say something. I stepped all over you.
I was going to say, would you like to know what we have on the show besides local dialects?
I would love to know.
In the news, the Predator joins a top-tier rogues gallery. Free comic book day titles, lapsing IPs, and yet another way that comics can be late, Joe. There's not enough of them. And we also have reminders of some final order cutoffs on some things we think you might enjoy. Conventions, the latest edition of Becky's My Walk Down Lois Lane, and it's a doozy, Joe. What we read last week, which was Where Monsters Lie, cul-de-sac number 2. What we're looking forward to this week. Todd and Joe have issues where we reread Gail Simone's Secret Six in its entirety, and we have 2 issues this week. It's Secret Six number 30 and a crossover into Doom Patrol Volume 5, number 19. Details on our CLZ giveaway, and I don't think we have any TV talk at the end of this show, Joe, until maybe next week.
Right. We do have an update in regards to the scheduling of all of that, which we'll get to at the end of the show, of course.
Right.
So as you mentioned, the Predator, which is now part of the Disney family. I know there are female Predators and male Predators out there. I don't know if that makes the female Predators Disney princesses or not. The jury, I think, is still out on that. But Marvel has been doing a slew of Aliens versus blank books and Predator versus blank books over the last year or so, and now the most current one that they have announced is Predator versus Spider-Man, following in the footsteps of the previously much more gory, violent, pre-red-bagged books of Predator versus Black Panther and Predator versus Wolverine. Maybe it's just me, I'm mentioning it because it's news, These books do nothing for me.
They do nothing for me anymore.
Okay.
Because the novelty is worn off. Like back when DC, like as we're doing previewing the past, sometimes we mention, like, I think Predator Batman just happened as we were doing it. Maybe the sequel, Batman Predator 2. But the one that I always liked was the Superman Alien one. And now, like, I'm 30 years later, it's like, how many more characters are going to run into the aliens or the predators? And it's just, I really don't care anymore.
Now, and it's so weird because Superman versus Alien is one that I bid on.
Yeah, that was a great one, by the way.
And that was a really good one. And I think where it comes into is, if I remember correctly, that Superman versus Alien at the time was Dan Jurgens was at least involved in it somehow, right?
I believe it was Dan Jurgens writer and Kevin Nolan art.
Let's see if you're correct. And if you're correct, you get nothing. You just get to. Okay. So it was written by Dan Jurgens and Chuck Dixon. Art by Dan Jurgens and John Bogdavan.
Okay.
However you pronounce that, right?
Maybe Kevin Nolan did covers. That's what I might be remembering.
Possibly. Right. That being said, because I think the reason that one hit was because it was being done by the current creative team.
Right.
Whereas, like, the other ones are not by they feel like the current Predator versus whomever ones, and they're all done by the same writer, which is Benjamin Percy, and there are different artists on each one, and I get that as well. But those feel like they exist in the Predator universe as opposed to the Marvel universe.
Right.
Whereas Superman versus Aliens, because it was done by an existing Superman creative team, felt like it existed in the ongoing Superman universe.
Kind of the same way, like, isn't they're doing an Avengers Aliens right now?
Yeah.
They're coming up, and I'm like, whatever. I get what you're saying. I always felt the Superman Alien one and the Batman Predator one were still, once again, like Elseworld stories to me, but at least the Superman writer wrote it. So I get what you're saying, but I feel like, and not to disparage the writer, the artist, whatever, I just feel like these are like an afterthought. It's like, who's up to bat against the Predator? And I'm like, okay, call me when it's Doctor Doom and maybe I'll buy it, Now,
conversely, on both sides of the coin there, call me when we get to Predator versus Great Lakes Avengers.
That would be interesting.
When we've gotten that far down the roster of things,
Mm-hmm.
Predator versus Alpha Flight. Sign me up.
Yeah. Predator versus the superior foes of Spider-Man.
Oh, now see there. I mean, if we can get Nick Spencer writing comics again that people will read, sign me up for that. But I was always more intrigued by, like, the movie crossovers that they would do. Because at least in my mind there, like, we'll never get, or at the time, things change so much. Like, we'll never get Terminator versus RoboCop. Or we'll never get Aliens versus Predator. So the only way I can consume these two Hollywood properties is through a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did, what was it, Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, which was the alleged, supposed, never going to happen sequel to Freddy versus Jason. So, like, when you get, like, those mashup things happening, I'm on board for it, the movie properties. But when it's movie and comic book, even though, like, technically the comic book people are movie people now because the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's not really. Anyway.
It kind of muddies the water for you.
Yeah, just a bit.
Right. Now, just to touch on the Disney princess thing, because it just jumped into my mind. Does that mean Alien Queen trumps Disney princess?
Maybe.
Because, princesses are, daughters of queens. So I think the hierarchy in the Marvel universes, in the Disney princesses, Alien Queen rules them all. And I'm fine with that.
We need a ruling on that. Someone who knows this stuff much better than you or I do.
Right.
Now, speaking of which, they rolled out, we were talking about last week, some of the here and there and everywhere free comic book day books that are coming out. All of the books have been rolled out since, and a lot of times you'll get like a flip book almost, so it's like a way that the publishers are getting, 2 books for the price of 1, or sometimes they're using it as like jumping on point for something big. We talked about like the Godzilla stuff and the horror imprint over at IDW.
Mm-hmm.
I know Mad Cave is using it as the jumping on point for their new Phantom book. I know Marvel is doing an Ironheart book to hopefully coincide with the TV show that's coming out, right?
Right.
But then it looks like Dynamite's. This one is just very funny to me that it's in the same book. That it's Thundercats and Powerpuff Girls,
right,
in the same book, which is very funny. But yeah, I'm always happy whenever there's offerings and they do a big push for free comic book day.
I am too, and the ones that jump out at me, obviously you mentioned the Phantom, which our retailer is probably going to be all over, but. The FF one, which is a flip book with X-Men, because anything FF, see how it kind of ties into, Emperor Doom and stuff. And then Black Mirror is getting a comic book, which kind of blows my mind. Did you ever watch any of the Black Mirror stuff on Netflix?
A couple, 2, 3 here and there. Not a ton of them. We talked about it, of course, but I never watched it, fully.
Right. I watched most of it, and then I missed like the last season, and I got rid of Netflix and stuff like that. So when Sandman comes back and I get Netflix again, I'll probably watch it. But those first 3, maybe 4 seasons of Black Mirror are some of my favorite, like twisty, like Twilight Zone-esque stuff, but it was always like sci-fi. And it, like, I kind of stay away from TV adaptations and comics, but I really kind of want to try that Black Mirror book when it comes out.
So I'm shocked that it took this long for one to come out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also shocked that it's not by one of the major publishers.
Yeah. I don't know. By major publisher, you mean just not DC and Marvel, right?
Well, okay. So the publisher on it is a publisher I've never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Like IDW, Dynamite, Valiant. Like we can go through the top 10 or 20 before we get to Twisted Comics.
Yeah. I'll have to flip through
hopefully this is the thing that catapults them to comic book superstardom and puts them in the top 10 rankings, knocking Valiant out of that number 10 position.
Right.
I don't know the writer on this, Neil Gibson. I don't know if he's like associated with the TV show or not. And of course, the artist on the book is the infamous TBD.
My favorite artist.
I'm looking at this here. Okay, so the writer is the publisher, a gentleman by the name of Neil Gibson, as I just mentioned.
Right.
He has a thing up there for the comic, of course. We're going to look into his stuff a little bit later on, but he also has a Patreon as well.
Yeah, everybody does.
Right. So, go check them out.
Right.
If you're interested, because I'm just looking at the quick shot of his posts here, and a lot of it is how to make a comic.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're kind of interested in that sort of thing, and there's also stuff in here in regards to what appears to be how they got the rights and stuff to Black Mirror.
Oh, cool. I'll check that out.
Yeah, so definitely something very interesting there,
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, hopefully this is the thing that catapults them into superstardom.
Yep.
And lastly, just to clarify, the Thundercats Powerpuff Girls book is a crossover. It's not a flip book.
Oh, see, that's why I was like, I can understand, doing the flip book, with those two properties. But as a crossover, that's even more interesting. That's Great Galoo. The Great Garloo territory right there?
Mm-hmm. Speaking of licensed properties and other comic book companies, it was just announced that Boom let the licensee for both the Buffy comics and the Firefly comics lapse.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they haven't been putting out a ton of stuff. I think they had a Buffy ongoing for quite some time, but they had just recently solicited a Zoe book. I don't know who that is.
Me either.
Someone from Firefly again. I'm unfamiliar with it.
Oh, I thought that was from Buffy. I know who Zoe is.
Okay, Zoe from Firefly. That was solicited in the that was in the September previews for stuff that was supposed to be coming out in November, and that book has just been canceled.
Oh, sad.
Yeah.
I used to read all the Firefly stuff, but it got really watered down, so I was like, I tapped out.
Gotcha.
And I never watched any of the Buffy TV show. I watched a little bit of the Angel spinoff, and that was about it.
I only saw the Buffy movie. Right. And the Buffy TV show just felt like something not for me.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll come back to the comics in just a second. There's a member of the Buffy TV show cast that's not like part of the main, like, you know how whenever there's like a TV show, like a Buffy type show, you have your ensemble cast?
Right.
Several main characters, could be anywhere from like 3 to 6 or 7, right?
Right.
And then you have like your secondary cast that's like outside of the main cast. Like if you were to do an ad for the show, they wouldn't be in it.
Okay.
But there's still a featured player. They're on pretty much every episode. One of the actors who was in that like ancillary B cast on Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a big player these days in the Dabbleverse.
Okay.
A gentleman by the name of Adam Bush. He's a working actor. He's actually does musical projects currently. He just did a project. I can't remember the artist's name that he's working with, but it's a bunch of Nine Inch Nails covers that he was like the producer and so forth on. But it's funny to see like a real working actor, somebody who was on like a very popular television show, feel the same way as I do about Cardiff and Tookie and producer Chris, and that's it.
Oh, okay. I was worried, but go ahead.
That being said, it's crazy to think that these licensees were just dropped by Boom. That feels like not a mistake. That feels like a decided strategy that either the return wasn't enough for them to keep doing them, or something came through where the rights maybe increased.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, okay. It definitely doesn't feel like something like, we plumb forgot,
right.
This lapsed. Usually you at least get like a 90-day notice that says like, hey, don't forget about these.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel it's kind of like, let's just say there's something in the air for Buffy and or Firefly in the Whedonverse. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like, we have plans for these. So we're going to triple our licensing costs. And they're like, we don't want it, but let's everybody save face and just say we let it lapse. You know what I mean? Let's not put out the PR that we can't afford it anymore.
Right. Now, this was one of those other things where the Buffy license is another one where it was originally at Dark Horse, then it went to IDW, then it went to Boom, where Boom has only had it for like the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see if that's maybe something that reverts back to IDW, who, did it before. Actually, so it's okay. So the clarity there is Dark Horse did Buffy, IDW did Angel.
Yes, that was always weird because they had two different companies doing that. Because I remember when Angel, characters from that of all books crossed over, they did a crossover with Fallen Angel, and I'm like, okay, I guess, but they were always two different companies from what I remember.
Right. And it looks as though Firefly has always been at Boom. until now, of course. So it'll be interesting to see if and when those get picked up somewhere else, you know?
Right. I don't know why I want to say Firefly was at Dark Horse, too.
If it was, Wikipedia doesn't say it.
Okay.
The most trusted source for all comic book news and information.
Okay. It might be because it was under, at that time it was called Serenity, even though
There you go.
That the Firefly brand, it was like with the movie and the spinoff, all the comics were called Serenity. So maybe there's a difference in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if it goes to IDW, if it goes back to Dark Horse, or if it just goes somewhere else. Like maybe it goes to Twisted.
Man, you never know. Mad Cave.
Yeah. And then last but not least, there was alleged delays from Diamond this week.
Mm-hmm.
They had sent out releases to comic book stores this past Friday because they had recently closed one of their warehouses in, I think, New York, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So people that were in the northeastern area that was typically getting their books from the Northeast or in the Northeast and out of their facility in Plattsburgh that they closed or were in the process of closing, those folks would be getting their books from a warehouse in Mississippi. Okay.
Right.
Now, there was a ton of books that were supposed to be late this week. And when I look at the list of the books that Diamond, at least, so our store was not affected by this particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
But our store was affected by last week's books and completely different books that are not on this list shipping from Diamond.
Yep.
So, things like this make me worry about Diamond.
I'm already worried about Diamond, but go ahead.
You know, when they're having these sort of delays and they're sending out lists, because I would assume that our store would be getting stuff from that Plattsburgh distribution house.
Definitely. That I know for a fact. Our retailer always mentioned Plattsburgh. Okay. And I think back in the day when they had UPS strikes, he would go up and drive to Plattsburgh to get his order.
Right. So it's just, and to even further, like one of the things that were delayed or supposed to be delayed was the actual preview catalogs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like I said, there was some stuff that did not make it, but a lot of the heavy hitters, and I'll say heavy hitters, stuff like the Marvel books that were on the list.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, all those Marvel books made it to the store this week because they were in the picture that our retailer puts out on social media saying like, hey, here's what's going to be in the shop tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But like the actual previews catalog itself was not there. I think I got the Iggy that the Chip Zdarsky comic news thing was missing.
Right.
But it has not been a good month for Diamond, let's say.
No, and this throws us off completely because we have the books that ship from Lunar and from Diamond, and now, these are 2 different weeks, but now this one is going to be delayed. Like, it makes me want to stop buying comics sometimes, but I won't, Joe. I won't.
No, I never can. I sit here and I think about it. I'm too deep in.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never do that. I like going to the retailer. I like buying my physical books. I like the social aspect of going to pick up the comic books.
Yeah, but it is aggravating though, man. Ugh.
The unsurety of it all.
Right, and then some of us don't have lists triplicated, right. So it comes down to like I have to be asking, like, okay, this didn't ship this week. All right, if it ships this, I have to remember now. You know what I mean? I have to write down and put down, all right, this was supposed to come out this week, and now it didn't. And there's a book that we didn't get this week. And it's like, all right, I got to remember to ask for it to see if it comes in next week,
Yeah.
So that's the aggravating part.
Right. And, one thing, and then I have to do it in triplicate, at least in the notebook, it's a little easier that I can just like cross something out or write a different date next to it. But I still have to go through and change all my other tracking sources of these sort of things whenever books are delayed or late or whatever it is. But yeah, I just worry. I'd like to get my comic books in a timely manner in which that they are solicited,
Right.
Yeah. Speaking of which, one of the ways that you can help yourself and make sure your books are in, and obviously shipping from Diamond or Lunar are out of everyone's control, but it's one thing to let your retailer know the books that you want. And I did say here, and I've made a pact with myself to be more diligent in regards to reminding not only ourselves, this really kind of sort of doesn't apply to us just because the way that Todd and I do our lists, the relationship that we have with our local retailer, but so that you don't miss out on books. Stuff that we're looking forward to, when they have their final order cutoff dates, we're going to try our best to remind you so you don't miss out on them. And this upcoming Monday is the final order cutoff date for both Kyle Stark's new book from Dark Horse called Those Not Afraid and Jeremy Adams' new Aquaman #1 at DC. I feel as though those are two books that Todd and I are both looking forward to.
I concur.
We'll probably end up talking about them on the show when they come out sometime in, January or February or, whenever it is. But if you want to be on them, and we recommend these books. If you're going to pick up your books on Wednesday, you're waiting till after the holiday, you're going to your local retailer this weekend for Small Business Saturday. I'm not sure if that's still a thing in the world.
I think it is.
But if you are going to your local retailer anytime between now and Monday, be sure to let them know if you want them. Kyle Starks doesn't miss. When it comes to the books that he's been putting out, Those Not Afraid isn't something that I could even give you a pitch on other than it's a Kyle Starks book. We're going to get it anyway. Todd and I, have both been enjoying Jeremy Adams stuff on Green Lantern and on Flash Gordon. I was excited to see him getting a chance to do Aquaman. So, check those books out. Get your orders in by this Monday to make sure that when they do come out in January, that you're not missing out on the books.
Right.
So also this weekend, I'm shocked that there is any conventions. I figured because of the holiday weekend there wouldn't be. But apparently on the West Coast, they don't celebrate Thanksgiving.
Maybe.
Because they are doing Fan Expo San Francisco this weekend. And they got some big names, man. I'm super excited. I wish I was a West Coast person. Frank Miller is going to be there. Donnie Cates is going to be there. Donnie Cates, I hope you're doing okay. I hear you are. If you're going to the San Francisco convention, Donnie Cates is there. Tell him that not Todd and myself, but if you want to mention us by name, that's cool. But the collective we as a comic book community are hoping he's doing well.
Right.
Art Adams, Eric Larson, who doesn't get out much to do stuff, David Mack, Stephen Platt, Freddie Williams, amateur ghost hunter himself, but also he's more like you would know him from the Batman Ninja Turtles crossover. We talked about crossovers before. That wasn't like movie properties. Those were two comic book properties, and those I enjoyed heavily.
Yep.
Yeah. It ties it all back into that stuff.
It's poetry because it rhymes.
But those are the comic book folks. There are a bunch of media folks that are going to be there as well. The usual media folks are going to be out that are typically at the Fan Expo stuff. But, we're focusing on comic book folks this week. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have the link to that convention, of course, in the show notes, along with the episode description, wherever you're going to find the show. And we're also going to have information about the soon-to-be-named network at soon-to-be-named-network.tumblr.com. Anytime any of the shows go live, you could certainly find them on their own individual websites through the podcatcher of your choice, which apparently seems to be Spotify for some reason. Let me know, everyone.
Right.
But the one-stop shop for all the shows in the soon-to-be-named network is soon-to-be-named-network.tumblr.com. And, of course, that includes this show that you're listening to right now, Longbox Heroes After Dark, Puzzle Warriors 3, Profane Arguments, At Odds with Wrestling, We Need Wrestling, Final Wrestling Place, and Porch Talk, because Wings on Wings is no more. I did buy my hot sauce, actually several bottles of hot sauce, not for myself, but for gifts for people for I almost said Halloween. For Christmas upcoming, if you have a hot sauce person in your life and they like it really hot and really spicy, The gang over at Wings on Wings have tested and tried them all. And I don't think they were selling their sauce. Be like, oh my goodness, it's so hot. It was real. It was a shoot, brother. And reach out to them. Find their social media, whether it be _Wings on Wings, DJ, Brett, Michelle. We have all their stuff always linked up in all the show places. Reach out to them. Get a bottle of the hot sauce, whether it be for yourself or as a gift.
Yeah, I got to pick mine up. I should have talked to him today about that.
I'll remind you next week to remind him to bring the stuff to you.
Right. And if he hears this, you never know, Right.
You could also check out some of our friends and the stuff that they're up to in and around the internet. Go check out Mike Sterling's blog over at progressiveruin.com. Go check out our friend Kevin's blog over at helionsteam.com. Go check out Rick Williams, the Chop Shop at freekaratechops.storenvy.com. Jason Sandberg's Jupiter is still available over on his Indiegogo, a la carte, just the book itself, or with all the accoutrements. Go check out Chris Runt's Battle Monsters, either the digital or print versions of his book over at fortressofcomicnews.com. Our friend Davey of the band Cave People has his own self-published comics. You can get those over at cavedomaincomics.com. Davey has been posting some of the art up over on Blue Sky, if you've made the switch over to there. And no matter what I do, Blue Sky always marks his art posts as sensitive content.
Oh, wow. Well, he's a sensitive artist, Joe.
I don't think that's the reason why they're marking it that way.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And if you do not have a comic book store in your area, or you do not have a good comic book store in your area, let our store be your store. Comics on the Green. We talked about them a bunch here today. I linked up the Facebook page because that's where Dave and the crew do most of their business. Puts up the information on Tuesday about the books that are going to be available on Wednesday. Puts up the information about the latest Silver Age collections that fall in his lap of key issues in mint and pristine condition. If you want to get in on the ground floor of some of those, by all means, go check those out. You could also sign up. Like Todd and I mentioned, we love to get our physical books. We love that communal nature. But if you don't have the time or you don't have the ability, let our store sign you up for a mail order subscription service. They can mail your books to you weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever you prefer. And if you do, there's a chance that you can get a sketch on the package from our good friend Becky, who we're going to turn things over to now for My Walk Down Lois Lane.
Welcome back. Last week I told all of you about Israel Waldman, the man Wikipedia calls a low-budget entrepreneur who bought up materials from defunct comic companies, didn't give a single care about copyright, and put out 300 issues of his reprinted Super Comics between the years of 58 and 64. Israel did this again in the 70s, with some names you may have heard of and some drama you may not have heard of. Today's episode is about my personal favorite comic company, Skywold Comics. So let's dive in. To start, we're actually going to talk about Sol Brodsky. He started at Atlas, and while there, worked uncredited on these little indie titles called Daredevil and Strange Tales. The thing all of you know him for, and should recognize him for, is he's the colorist of Millie the Model. Stan Lee said many, many times over the years that Sol was his right hand and an absolutely massive help at Marvel. So in 1970, when Israel Waldman came knocking with an opportunity, Sol betrayed Stan, left Marvel, followed Waldman, and Skywold Publications were born. A mixture of Brodsky and Waldman, Skywold started in horror. They pulled in Al Hewitson, a former assistant to Stan Lee, this is going to be a running theme, and a freelancer at Warren Publications, because Al knew good horror. Between 70 and 74, they put out 23 issues of a magazine called Nightmare, and 11 issues of a magazine called Scream. So if they had actually stayed in this lane, things would have turned out differently. But they made a creative change, and it became such a mess that I'm sitting here 50 years later, gossiping about it to all of you. What did they do? They wanted more. They wanted full-color comics. So they began poaching all of the pros over at Marvel. Using fake names so Stan Lee wouldn't find out, Skywold published the work of many Marvel greats Len Wein, Marv Wolfman, Jerry Conway. Skyward published the first work of John Byrne. That is a Nightmare 20 if any of you want that. Side note, they also published 2 issues of a magazine called Hell Rider, which is about a vigilante on a fire motorcycle by Gary Friedrich. And if that sounds like Ghost Rider to you, that's because it kind of is. Gary took that idea over to Marvel, and it's one of the pieces of the backbone of Ghost Rider. They used the same comic material that Waldman owned and began publishing all of the same romance and horror books that Super Comics did, but paid a pro to make small changes like hemlines and hairstyles. Everything lasted 3 issues, except Tender Love Stories. That was 4. To keep with my full circle of girl comic knowledge, Kurt Scharfenberger of Lois Lane, yes, the Kurt Scharfenberger, is the cover artist and worked on the insides for Tender Love Stories 3 and 4. I own them. I own the realistic romances that Tender reprints, and it's really funny to compare the differences of Avon's 1940s issues and Skyward's 1970s issues, because Waldman paid to make it look hip for the kids, so the text is the exact same, but the hair is longer and the skirts are shorter. Skyward fell fast. Towards the end, Soule bowed out. He told Hewitson that Marvel made him an offer to go back and develop their overseas syndication, and he was going to go do it because it was a big opportunity. However, according to Jim Shooter, Soule saw the ship going down and went crying and begging to Stan for his job back. By then, they had a new production manager, so Stan convinced the board over at their sister company, Candace, to create a new job offer for Soule, so they created VP of Operations. I was at the HersheyCon earlier this year. I really should have asked Jim Shooter about that. Hewitson really tried to keep Skyward going after he was put in charge, and he tried to be innovative with the horror titles, but sadly Skyward shut down in 1974. I would like to read all of you a passage from an interview Al gave in 2004 before he died, because he claims he knows the reason that Skyward failed. He says, "It was Marvel's distributor. Our issues were selling well and some sold out. Such returns as we received were shipped overseas, mainly to England, where they sold out completely. When Marvel entered the game with countless titles gutting the newsstand, their distributor was so powerful they denied Skyward access to all but the very largest newsstands, so our presence was minimal and our fans and readers couldn't find us. The Waldmans, Israel and his business partner Herschel, and I had a business lunch with our distributor in the fall of 1974, and we were given very specific information about the state of affairs on the newsstands, which had nothing to do with Warren Publishing or Skyward's solid readership base. I bet none of you had, we stole a bunch of pros from Marvel, so they muscled us out of the business on that bingo card, but there it is. So if you're asking me what happened to Waldman after Skyward, I actually don't know. I assume the information is out there, but I don't want to know it. I love the idea of this man so much. I want to believe that he is still alive, traveling town to town, making bootleg DVDs or something. I hope all of you liked the rise and fall of Skyward comics. If you ever come across any of them, grab them. Pick them up, read them, love them as much as I do. Tune in next week for more.
Not so much Lois Lane this week, but another piece of history that nobody talks about.
Right.
And it's crazy to think, again, follow up from last week's Super Comics. And then this week, of course, we get the follow-up, as mentioned, with Israel Waldman's second opportunity to try to print somebody else's work as his own.
Mm-hmm. And I laugh because we were talking about a little of this before. Like, she was like, oh, I don't even want to, like, look into whatever happened to him, Israel Waldman. And she didn't. And I was talking to you and her, and I'm like, I looked into it. She's like, what happened? I'm like, I can't find anything on this gentleman. Like, he just disappears into the ether. I found like one picture and like more like articles about this kind of stuff. But I feel like if this man did anything, Joe, after his defunct comics in the 70s, was he opened up an independent wrestling company. There's no way he didn't. And I could just imagine, he's like, come to my wrestling. We have all the stars. We have Bulk Hogan, rambunctious Ronnie Piper, the Steel Ayatollah, Chet the Button Man Hart, and Andre the Gargantuan. All the stars are here, Joe.
There was a guy, and again, the time frame could work out.
Mm-hmm.
And again, my wrestling brain just isn't working right now, but there was definitely a promoter in the late 70s who did that.
Mm-hmm.
Like he would advertise that he was going to have a show and Bruno San Martino was going to be on the show.
Oh, I know him.
Right. And it would be like popular wrestlers, just their names changed slightly.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't think of the promoter's name, but I'm going to find out, and we're going to do a follow-up post on this. Right. Now's not the time for me to be doing research on Google, you know?
No, but I would say I think you do have to look in, because I have to get the pictures. I think Israel Waldman looks a lot like Sidney Bacabella, by the way.
That lines up perfectly.
So you might have to do a journalism on that one when you have some free time.
But of course, as always, thank you very much, Becky, for the research and everything else that you do with this. But yeah, I'm gonna have to. It's gonna be one of those things. As soon as like I'm doing the edit, the name of the promoter is gonna pop into my head, and we're gonna go from there.
I have no doubt that some point in this show, we're going to be like talking about Secret Six, and you're going to go like Stephen Jones. You know what I mean? You're just going to yell it out. So yeah. We'll see.
So let's get into what we read from this past week. So the book that both Todd and I were looking forward to this week was Where Monsters Lie, Cul-de-sac #2, written by the aforementioned Kyle Starks, with art by Piotr Kowalski. This is the continuation of the, studio pitch, elevator pitch for Where Monsters Lie, is that there is a gated community where a lot of the archetypes for the horror movie characters that you would see in movies live, obviously, in this, you know, the licensees for things, so it's very close. It's like, it's very clear who this is supposed to be, and very clear who this is supposed to be, and this is supposed to be. So the first part of this was the nice, fancy cul-de-sac where everybody lives in the nice houses. This one is we're getting into sites B and C. Mm-hmm. And I think the further down the alphabet you go, you can't get to X because somebody else already has that. But the further down the alphabet you go, the more and more grotesque things are going to get. The more and more dangerous things are going to get. Obviously, A being the top of the food chain, B and C not so much. And the B story in here, and again, C, is Linus and his serial killer companion, whose name we can't say on the show.
Right.
Run afoul of some of the cannibals and ne'er-do-wells at Site C. But, of course, we still have the ongoing stuff with Connor Hayes, who is the super cop from the first series, who is now being brainwashed, blackmailed, whatever verbiage that you would want to use, by Vilmos, who's like their Freddy Krueger Dream Master sort of character, to be the psycho cop serial killer person. And this issue is his first adventure alongside some of the other newer characters that we've gotten a chance to meet during the course of just the first 2 issues of this series. Right.
And we end up having like another plot too, like the reason the cop is under their control a little bit, which I would say the perfect word for it is they're grooming him to be the psycho cop. And his wife, who has an unborn child, there definitely is a plot with that, because he ends up talking to a character named Wyatt, who's in these sites, who's his wife's father, kind of a deal. And he's kind of looking to him for help, because he knows that even though in all this craziness, he'll maybe, back him up and all that. I love all this. I get a little confused on some of the characters. I have to remember who they are. But that's not a problem. But I will say the Site C with the cannibal characters, that went way sideways faster than I thought it was going to go. And I'm just hoping that there are some more, interesting stories to be told there, if you get my meaning.
Mm-hmm. So. But this is a really good book. Of the new people that we're introduced to here, I would say that Mr. Wrinkly is my favorite.
Right.
Yes.
He's got a definite look to him.
Yes, he definitely does. And I saw a lot of people, and again, Kyle is so strong with his dialogue, and this book is not as funny as a lot of his other books are. Those are a little bit more harder on the humor, but the little bits of humor that are in this issue definitely hit very, very strong.
Yeah. I love the bit where every once in a while somebody, like, you're in a room full of serial killers, so obviously things are off, but there's always that one who has it up just a tick higher, and they're always like, what is wrong with you? To killers, you know what I mean? Like even in the world of we're all wrong here, you're really wrong, sir. And it makes me laugh every time.
And then you have the bit who's like, I forget what his name in the book is, but he's like he's like the calendar man, right?
Right. He's the holiday killer.
The holiday killer. And he's faced with the dilemma with the upcoming Mother's Day holiday. Mm-hmm. Does he kill mothers, or does he dress as a mother and kill people? Right.
And his notebook gives me a glimpse into your mind, I think. And I won't go too much, but he has the two sides of the paper, like you said, kill a mom or be a mom. And the one, and I'll only give the one good joke. He's like, is Mother Teresa alive? ? I'm like, is she? I'll have to Google that later.
He's a pen and paper guy. I get it.
Yeah, I was crying. I'm like, I understand Joe's notebook now.
And again, just to kind of end it back around, the promoter in question's name was Jack Pfeffer.
Hassan Pfeffer?
No. And unfortunately, the timeline, unless Israel Waldman was Jack Pfeffer at the same time, he mostly ran shows in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said before, instead of Bruno Sammartino, it was Bruno Sand Martino.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of Buddy Rogers, it was Bummy Rogers.
Oh, I like this guy, Joe.
And wait, let's see if you can get this one. Instead of Bobo Brazil, it was
Boo Boo Brazil.
Hobo Brazil.
Oh, I would have went with Boo Boo. And hope they didn't notice the extra O's.
So he ran shows in the 60s up until about 1974. Running the fake versions of the popular wrestlers that were in the territories that he was run out of in the 30s and 40s.
How do you know Vince's wasn't the fake wrestling and this guy's was the real one?
Well, this was before this, when it was Vince's dad. When it was kind of at least it was more directly tied to organized crime as opposed to the disorganized crime that Vince would later bring to the company.
Reminds me of a wrestler I knew in my heyday by the name of Bruno Sand Martino.
I got to use the line, and again, we're all over the place here. Go pick up, I know the next issue is going to be late, but go pick up Where Monsters Lie. It's really good, right?
Right.
Where I got to tweet out to somebody that so-and-so is moving like grease lightning, and so-and-so is moving
like a slow block of ice.
Which is one of the greatest one of the most underrated Dusty quotes that our local retailer loves the most.
Yep.
All right. So that's what we read from this past week. Let's get into what we're looking forward to coming out this week. If you head over to patreon.com/longboxheroes, we put up the poll post, which is a link to all the books that are coming out this week. Whether you get your books in print, whether you get them digitally, whether you get them sent to your home, however it is you get your books, be forewarned, be forearmed, know what's coming out this week. Todd and I attempt to guess what the other is most looking forward to coming out this week. Todd is currently in the lead over me with one correct guess. And I do need to, go ahead.
No, I'm looking over your list. And we both have two gigantic lists this week, Joe.
This definitely felt like a dumping ground, and I use that in the most endearing sense of the word. This felt like a dumping ground of a bunch of stuff that may have been late from November that all came out in this last week for some reason, you know?
Yeah, one of the biggest weeks I've had in a long, long time. Is the book you're looking forward to most Justice League Unlimited #1?
It is, and I think that's also the book that you're most looking forward to coming out this week as well.
Yes, we need a good Justice League book, Joe.
It feels like it's been, obviously it's been a while since we have read Justice League mainline book. Even during, what was the one crossover where we finally got back into DC crossovers again? Night Terrors.
Right.
So, like, Justice League was kind of like what happened at the end of Justice League, and they had canceled Justice League for a little bit. And then kind of brought it back, and Justice League has kind of been off the table. And, we were on board for, like, the next, like, 2 big DC crossovers. And this more or less spins out of what came from Absolute Power and the All In issue. Right. And it's Mark Waid writing Justice League.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about that.
I am too, and because I even when you're talking about the crossovers and everything, like there was a time where we were kind of reading it, and they like killed off the Justice League, and I'm like, could we just get a super team in the DC universe, and that team is the Justice League?
Yes,
that'd be great if we could, please.
That would be awesome. So. One of the other things I want to mention, of course, is this is the last week to get your entries in for the free year subscription to CLZ, whether you go to CLZ.com or collectors.com. They do a bunch of different apps where you can track and catalog your collections. They have stuff for books and music, games, movies, and comics. Comics is the thing that Todd and I use this for. It was something that my friend Chris got me into. I got Todd into, and then together Todd and I have gotten more and more people into this. We love this app. It's a great way to organize your collection, keep track of your collection. It gives you a lot of freedom in the way that you could enter and catalog your books. The books are updated very quickly on Tuesday afternoon, and a majority, if not all of the variant covers are in there. Like, I know the reason that it clicked in my head was when I was looking at the number of variant covers that Justice League Unlimited #1 has. They're all in there. Right. They get the store exclusive ones. They have it all. If you're that so inclined that you're looking for all those different variants, those are in there. Like I said, the collectability aspect, the organization aspects are things that both Todd and I love very much. And the good folks at CLZ were nice enough to reach out to us to offer to you, the listeners of our show, a free year of this. Now, normally it's $19.95 for the year to get it. If you already have it, this will be your renewal for the year. They would just add it onto your existing subscription. Just email us at longboxheroes@gmail.com. Make sure that you have CLZ giveaway in the subject line, and we will announce the winner of that and get you and the CLZ folks together so that you can get your free subscription starting next week.
Right.
So that is that for the giveaway. We got one more week on that. Let's get into Todd and Joe Have Issues, where we're going to talk about Gail Simone's Secret Six reaching, and again, I don't want to say the bitter end, but I will be sad to be done reading this book because I have been enjoying revisiting an old friend in this book.
Right, and I've enjoyed you enjoying revisiting it, Joe.
You. That's the most important thing. So this week, we've read 2 issues. Next week, we'll be reading 2 issues as well, just so that we can hit our goal at the end of the year to read the entirety of things. And next week, you'll probably know what the book for 2025 is going to be that we'll be doing Todd and Joe Have Issues for, or just shoot me a line and I'll tell you. If you want.
Maybe we've put some clues out there, too. You never know.
Yes. Eagle-eyed listeners of the show maybe can figure it out. But this week we read Secret Six number 30. and Doom Patrol number 19. I really liked issue 30, is that we bring everything back around to, one of the new villains that Gale had introduced in the book. And this is his grandson, who is a 21-year-old shiftless layabout, who is about to be kicked out of his home. He's bequeathed with, quote, $3 billion, 4 mistresses, and a particle cannon.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric decides that he is going to essentially become him and his D&D buddies are going to become the Rat Pack of supervillainy.
Sure.
And I don't think they quite understand any of it.
No.
But the one thing that they do understand is we're going to hire the Secret Six to go to Oolong Island. Is that how I would pronounce that?
I believe it is, yes.
Right. They are going to go to Oolong Island to kick all the residents off the island so they can turn it into their volcano, their base inside of a volcano, which is a volcano on Oolong Island. And This is where our Secret Six run afoul of the current, at this time, 2016's iteration of the Doom Patrol, written by our good friend, dearly departed this year, 2024, in Salty Keith Giffen.
Right. In the Secret Six issue 30, where that's where it starts out in the storyline, and we get to see once again the club that Scandal's new girlfriend works at, and they take Bane to it, which is kind of a cosplay club, if you will. The bit where Bane doesn't understand courting. I basically got all my teachings on courting from this issue, and it goes about as well as it usually does in here. But the bit where he's like, "I wish to mate. Here are the bargaining tokens they told me to purchase. Shall we begin negotiations?" Absolutely hysterical, especially the way they save it. And in the end, Bane shows off his muscles by helping somebody out, and basically all the ladies there seem to like Bane, Joe, and I hope it works out. I think Bane needs a woman in his life.
Well, again, that one girl is making a lot of accusations in regards to Bane's physique, accusing him of being on the chicken and rice diet. To which I say, no, that physique is pure venom, baby.
That's right. It's all venom. And the other thing is, I forgot at this time. I knew Keith Giffen wrote Doom Patrol at this time, but I completely forgot that Ambush Bug was on the Doom Patrol team.
What a delightful surprise when he showed up.
I was like, oh my God, that's right. And to see Gale write him here, and then we'll get Keith's version over there. Gale handles him very, very well in this book, Joe.
Yes. Now, if I have any complaint about the books, obviously, and again, this is going to be a very weird one to say, I didn't like that the Doom Patrol book had so much Doom Patrol in it. I wish it had more Secret Six in it.
Right. When you get to the Doom Patrol book, they kind of wrap things up quick. And then the second half is all Doom Patrol stuff that has nothing to do with the Secret Six. And I was like, let me skim this and see if there's a twist ending or something. And they all come back. But there wasn't. So made me sad.
A couple things with that. One is this Doom Patrol issue takes place this crossover with Secret Six takes place in the middle of an ongoing crossover, like an ongoing 5-issue story arc.
Right.
That was going on in Doom Patrol. Like, this issue of Doom Patrol is part 2 of 5 of a current story arc.
Right.
So there's a little muddiness there. And the other thing is, this ends up being the final story arc for this iteration of Doom Patrol. So I felt as though, because usually by the time that you have 3 issues left on something, you know that it's being canceled.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Keith had to get crammed in as much as he can, and that did sacrifice some of the Secret Six stuff, unfortunately.
Right.
But while I did like the stuff in the Doom Patrol issue that was Secret Six versus Doom Patrol, the artist on this, Matthew Clark.
Yes.
I liked his art, but I didn't like the way that it was colored for modern era. It felt as though his art would have worked better if it was colored in the olden way.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
No, I'm with you. But I've always been a fan of Clark's stuff, so I just kind of let it slide a little bit, I guess. I don't know.
And while Ambush Bug is on the Doom Patrol team, and it's crossing over at Secret Six, we did not get any interactions with Ragdoll and Ambush Bug.
Which would have been great.
But I definitely felt as though that could have been a very big matter and antimatter situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it might have just been too much for any of us to handle.
Yeah, we would have been overwhelmed. But we did get to see Danny the Street on vacation, so that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
The Doom Patrol character, that's a street. I always laughed at that one. So, but
and
he's like
and that was one of those like Grant Morrison-y concepts,
right?
That Keith was able to make work in a regular, mainline DC book.
Mm-hmm. But, and I'll say this, I will say this, I've never been a Doom Patrol guy. Okay. I always felt they were a little too weird, and it didn't translate in the comic. But everybody tells me that I would absolutely love the TV show that they did with Brendan Fraser as Robot Man and everything. Yeah. And I keep meaning to check that out because they say that flavor, which I always say never works for me in the comic. They're like, it works so well on screen and with all the characters and the actors and actresses. And I'm like, you know what? I think maybe I may have to check that out because of this.
I like the original Doom Patrol, Elastigirl, Professor, Robot Man, and Mr. Negative.
Right.
Okay. They feel very Fantastic Four-esque.
Right. I think the Fantastic Four were kind of based on... No, they were based on the Challengers of the Unknown. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right. But it very much feels like, hey, what if we give these four semi-related characters a semi-Fantastic Four thing, but they're all like hideously deformed monster-y things, right?
Yep.
And then obviously as years have gone on with these characters, because they're characters originally from the 60s, they just get weirder and weirder and weirder. And whatever your opinion of Grant Morrison is, as Todd mentioned before, I think once it becomes a Vertigo book written by Grant Morrison, it just starts to get like so weird, it's too weird.
Right. Even though I will say this, I liked Grant Morrison's run until it got really out there, and this is a hot take for me, the Coyote issue is one of the most overrated comics in history. But
oh my goodness.
Yes.
But then DC after that has tried so many times to fit this made super weird concept into a superhero universe that it no longer fits into.
Right.
And as you mentioned, the TV show that's on Max feels like the closest it has gotten to, getting that mix down right. But I think, and again, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but like Grant Morrison ruined these characters to be part of the mainline DC universe. Like they just like, Swamp Thing kind of can fluctuate back and forth. John Constantine can fluctuate back and forth. Doom Patrol, they're too far down the rabbit hole. They can never come back.
Right, and big names have tried, right? It didn't work. There was a John Byrne run of Doom Patrol in there. The only other one that I ever really liked, did you ever read the John Arcudi version of it?
I did.
I really like that one because there was a guy, I forget even the name on the team, but he was the kind of the leader, but he was a jerk teenager and he was always down on everybody and everything wouldn't work. So he became the Mr. Negative of the group. And I was like, that's a good play on everything. And it turned out that there was two robot men because one was a delusion of somebody else. And I was like, this is the closest that it ever worked being in the mainstream DC universe. But I think that being said, the right writer could bring it back as long as the problem I think what is like for me and you is we have what that team should be like welded into our mind. Should be the Grant Morrison. Maybe somebody could break that mold if they're a really good writer. I could see maybe like Mark Wade pulling it off or something. I don't know.
So again, I think there have been writers that have gotten bits and pieces of it. Like you mentioned, the John Arcudi thing and the little bits that, Giffen is able to do here, but no one has been able to do that whole cloth reintroduction to the DC universe. And I think what it needs to be is it needs, as you mentioned, the right creative team, and it needs to be time. You need to give enough time away, or just put it back into the Vertigo. Vertigo's back. Move it back to Vertigo, and just let it be crazy again.
I agree. That's probably where it would thrive,
Yeah. And, obviously we're talking about, 8 years ago, whatever it was, but the bits that Gail wrote of them in the Secret Six side of this, I think she had a good handle on them. And with the right mix of characters and the right the right artist and the right everything, I think, maybe this is something that, Gail could excel at, or like she has like a 6-issue pitch for, or a 4-issue pitch, or a 1 issue, or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just based on the little bit that we were able to see here in Secret Six.
I agree.
But we're almost done. Like I said, the rest from here on out is just Secret Six. Not crossing over with anything else. Next week is 2 issues again, issues 31 and 32 of Secret Six. And then we'll be in the home stretch for all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the home stretch, we are in week 12. We're about to start week 13 of the current NFL football season. The group is closed, but don't forget to get your picks in by Thursday afternoon. Todd does send those reminders out through social media to make sure to get those picks in. The ESPN site could be a little wonky with it actually registering your picks, so just double check.
Right.
I'm creeping up. I'm in 37th place here, Todd.
Yeah.
How many weeks are left in the season?
There are 18 weeks for 17 games apiece, so people get buys. So I'm guessing
So there's 6 more weeks left in the regular season?
Yes, there is.
So if I can maybe get up to 31st place if I keep going up 1 place a week, right?
There you go. That's all you got to do is you have to matriculate up the list, Joe. So I will say this, like you said, this is the Thanksgiving Day weekend, like week games. So instead of the Thursday night game, there'll be 2 during the day. So get your picks in by noon. I may put the tweet out tomorrow or today, which would be Wednesday. So say everybody, hey, get your picks in by tomorrow because it starts early before you get your turkey down your gullet,
if you go in through your browser, you could just schedule that tweet to go out whenever you would want it to.
You know what? I figured out a way with my Kindle to maybe do that, Joe.
Oh, my goodness. Look at you.
Yeah.
And Todd, you're currently in a 3-way tie for 17th place. So, you're doing all right too, right?
Yeah. Listen, I don't get sad or happy anymore when it comes to football. I'm a Raiders fan.
There you go. I saw somebody just before we started recording that it was like here we are at the end of week 12. If they were to cap the playoffs today,
right?
Like, here's what it would look like, based on the current standings. And I didn't see the Raiders on there anywhere, Todd.
No, they are taking a break this year. They don't want to, they want to take it easy and really come back hard next year. This is a
rebuilding year.
This is a rebuilding lifetime for me, Joe.
I was going to say a rebuilding decade.
Yeah, a lifetime, it seems. They haven't been they haven't won a Super Bowl since the 80s.
Right.
And they haven't been since that year they were cheated out of winning by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
One of their 31 rivals.
Yes.
So don't forget to get your picks in, get them in early, Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, because there's 2 games on Thursday, 1 game on Friday, and then the rest of the thing is all out on Sunday, right?
Except for there's 3 games on Thursday, 2 in the afternoon.
Oh, there's
the Thursday night game, and then the silver and black Friday game on Friday.
Patent pending.
Yep.
YouTube terms of service.
Yeah, I saw that. Made me laugh.
All right. Hey, you want to help out the show? You certainly can. There's a bunch of different ways that you could do so. You can make any and all of your eBay purchases through our eBay affiliate link. The show description contains an affiliate link for eBay. We may receive a small commission on any purchase that you make. You can use this affiliate link anytime you want to buy anything on eBay and support us at the same time.
Yeah.
I told you to hold off because as it stands right now over at our TeePublic store, it's 40% off any and all of your purchases that you make from now until Saturday. So whether you get stuff inspired by this show, by Longbox Heroes After Dark, by Soon to Be Named Network, on shirts and stickers and cell phone covers and decorative throws, anything, 40% off from now until Saturday. I know TeePublic is really good. They give you until about the second week of December to get stuff in time for the holidays without any sort of expedited shipping. So by all means, order now and order much. Lastly, but not leastly, of course, would be our Patreon, patreon.com/longboxheroes. In about 2 weeks' time, that is the only place that you're going to be able to get both shows, whether it be this show that you're listening to right now or Longbox Heroes After Dark, for free. That is never going to change. This show is always going to be free. Longbox Heroes After Dark is always going to be free on Fridays. Sign up for a free account. It's going to give you a private RSS link that you could point to whatever podcatcher that you use. Patreon has some sort of exclusivity with Spotify, so if you're getting your podcasts through Spotify, this will be a seamless transition for you. In 2 weeks, if you're having some issues finding the show, you're probably not hearing us in 2 weeks, but come back to this episode and I'll do what I can to help you, whether it be through messages here or social media or wherever it is. If you are at one of the paid levels on our Patreon, as little as $1 a month, you're going to get exclusive access to the soon-to-be-named network Discord, where you could contact and speak to Todd and myself directly, along with other hosts of other shows on the soon-to-be-named network, other listeners, other friends, other fans, all sorts of other things that you can get there. At our Discord, of course, you will get 2 bonus shows every month from Todd and myself. Comic Book Oddities, where we look at some of the stranger, lesser-known, much maligned attempts to get comic book properties to the small and silver screen. We just released, for the $5 and up folks, Supergirl this past week, the 1984 Helen Slater classic. And boy, howdy, I think we had a lot of fun with that one.
We did, and I think the photo that went with it was probably the best one that we've ever had. So
I wanted to use a picture of Faye Dunaway from the movie, one of the many, many, many pictures of Faye Dunaway, but I think we made the right choice to focus on the lead character of the film.
Yep.
For this, and of course, previewing the past, where we look at 30 years ago, this month's previews catalog. We're going to be getting ready to record December here in just about a week or so. There, the teaser of some of the pages went out to everyone. The full catalog is going to go out to all of the paid members, I think Thursday or Friday I have it scheduled for. But like I said, $1 is going to get you those 2 bonus shows. It's going to get you the full scans of those previous catalogs that we talk about on Previewing the Past and access to the Discord. $5 and up is going to get you those 2 bonus shows 2 weeks before everyone else, and it's going to get you After Dark 2 days before everyone else, so you can listen to these shows in the correct listening order. But sign up for free. That's the most important thing. If you're listening to this, 2 weeks, sign up for free. Because in 3 weeks, I'm not going to tell you to sign up for free. I'm going to hope that you're already there.
Right.
Anything else before we have a little bit of TV talk here to close things up?
No, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
All right. So, today it was announced that they moved the release date of the upcoming Star Wars Disney Plus show Skeleton Crew up 1 day. As all these streaming services do whenever they release a new series, they put 2 episodes out minimally. Boys is the only one that does it right, where they put out 3. But anyway.
Right.
So Skeleton Crew is going to have 2 episodes drop on Monday, the 2nd. So we're going to have enough time to watch them before we record next week. So we're going to talk about those 2 episodes next week. And we're going to make the decision whether or not we're going to watch that going forward, because this one's not grabbing me so much. But we could watch it and it could knock our socks off.
Right. Hey, that's what, we didn't think Penguin was going to be as good as it was,
Right. This could be the next Penguin. It's not going to be the next Penguin.
Spoiler alert, yeah.
But at the very least, it could maybe be the next Obi-Wan?
Well, possibly. maybe. I know it's not going to be the next Andor. I'll say that.
No.
But
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to give it a try. It's like, what is it, like Goonies, Stranger Things meets Star Wars, so...
Yeah, and Jude Law's in it. Bunch of little kids going on a Star Wars adventure.
Right.
I got high hopes.
I hope they crash land on the Endor's moon. You know, that'd be great.
I'm all for Ewoks, man.
Yep. Yeah,
but
so
that's
we'll give
it.
A try. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm excited to check that out. I'm excited to talk about it next week. I'm excited to talk about comics next week. I'm excited for everyone. I hope everyone in the United States and Minnesota have a happy Thanksgiving this week. Happy holidays, safe travels, safe shopping, safe whatever it is that you're going to be doing between now and the next time that you hear our voice, which is going to be Friday, possibly. So for Todd, this is Joe saying thanks for listening. This was episode 738, and we'll see you all here next week.
Remember, be a faucet, not a drain.
You're listening to the soon-to-be-named network, the Lamborghini of podcast networks.
The Rob is a Longbox hero. The Rob is a Longbox hero. He gives us five stars.